Hello everyone and welcome. On behalf of the Crowdfunding Professional Association, I'm thrilled to have you all with us today for what promises to be an energizing and insightful session of deep knowledge sharing. So before we provide this high-value content, as an all-volunteer organization, I am obliged to invite you all to join us as a member. And at only $9 a month, I think the value for this session is well worth the membership. And if it helps our board of over 20 industry professionals continue their volunteer efforts to bring needed changes to this industry through regulatory and legislative advocacy, I really do encourage you to join us. Individuals and corporate memberships are available at cfpa.org. That said, I now have the distinct pleasure of introducing someone who needs no introduction in the crowdfunding world, but I'm going to give him one anyway, because when you've known someone as long as I have, and as well as I've known Devin Thorpe, you don't miss a chance to shine a little spotlight. Devin is not only a recovered broker-dealer, but also now an author, an entrepreneur, and a crowdfunding expert, as you will soon find out. But perhaps why we're so aligned, he's also a tireless champion of impact, a pioneer in democratizing access to capital, and a longtime leader with me at the CFPA. Devin's work is consistently blending innovation, heart, and a whole lot of hustle. And his latest book, Crowdfunding Made Simple, a step-by-step guide to raising capital using AI tools, is no exception. It's smart, it's practical, and it's true to Devin's spirit. It's all about helping you succeed. So today he's going to walk us through how to harness the power of AI, yes, including our new friend ChatGPT, to make your regulated crowdfunding campaign easier, more strategic, and more effective. Whether you're a first-time user or a seasoned funder looking for that next edge, you are in the right place. So get ready for some light bulb moments and maybe even a few laughs, because Devin always delivers both. Please join me in giving a big warm CFPA welcome to my friend and our guide today, Devin D. Thorpe.
Hey, Scott, thank you so much. You're so kind. What a generous and kind introduction. I
Well,
barely recognize the guy you're talking about. That's
you have earned it,
very,
my friend,
very
so well
kind and
done.
generous.
Yeah.
I do want to say hi to everyone who's here. We're thrilled to see you all, and thank you for making time. I hope you'll find this session helpful. Let me let's see. I'm going to share my screen here. I've got some slides to help you kind of track what I'm talking about today, but I am excited to be here, and thank you very much for the opportunity. So we're talking about my book, Crowdfunding Made Simple, a step-by-step guide to raising capital from the crowd. You can get a free download of my book at 4se.fund/CMS free, and you can just scan the QR code to grab that. And so I encourage you to do that right now. I'll keep that link on the screen there at the bottom throughout the presentation. But again, we're excited to have you participate, get the book, and use it as a guide. We want people to have access to this information and to use it to prosper. Okay, let's jump in. So I really truly believe that AI is a huge game changer for regulation crowdfunding. Let me give you a quick example. This is going to blow your mind if you missed it, but last fall, the New York Times published a study. It was a small study, but a study that showed that ChatGPT was able to do a better job of diagnosing disease than doctors not using ChatGPT, or surprisingly, better than doctors who did use ChatGPT. And that was the mind blower. What I came to appreciate is that the doctors had not been properly trained on how to use ChatGPT. If you use ChatGPT like a search engine, you're not going to get much out of it. You've got it. So in crowdfunding, the ChatGPT and Gemini and Copilot, they're all similar in their capabilities. Claude, they're all there. They can all help. I like ChatGPT. I'll talk about ChatGPT being kind of the go-to source. But if you're building a deep relationship with Gemini, don't switch, right? Use Gemini. It'll do the same thing. But it will help you make crowdfunding easier if you're using prompts and practice and doing some of the best practices. It will really change the game for you. Okay, let's get into this. So, if you're going to, uh, you know, build a crowdfunding campaign, one of the first things you've got to do is figure out who is your crowd and what is their capability for supporting you. And it's probably bigger than you might realistically expect. But on the other hand, it may not be as big as you dream. Let me give you a clear example. If you've got a mailing list, an email list, a newsletter or something of, let's say 10,000 people, that sounds like plenty to quickly raise say $100,000. It's more difficult than you think. You're not going to send one email to that list and raise all the capital you need. So we got to be sophisticated about this and try to figure out, what is the potential for you to raise capital. And so you're going to look at all the different ways you can have connections with people. If you're operating a business already, you have customers. You may have a social media following that you may have developed personally over many years, right? I've got, almost 20,000 followers on LinkedIn and thousands across, other social media platforms, but if I'm honest, am I connecting with most of those people every day, every week, every month? No, I'm not connecting with most. So you got to be realistic. And it's a challenge to figure out what your network can deliver. Because most of the capital, especially in the early stages of a crowdfunding campaign, will come from your network. So you need to understand what your community, what your tribe can do. And so that figuring out that dollar amount, beginning to calculate that is one of the challenges. And in the book, I give you some guidance about how to do that. And ChatGPT can help you do that. And so here's a prompt that you can use to help estimate, for instance, what your customers might be willing to deliver. And so you could ask ChatGPT to evaluate this. And let me say this, it's a draft prompt, right? Well, as written, this prompt is great if you have been talking to ChatGPT or Gemini a lot in the past about your business. And ChatGPT knows your business. It tends to remember stuff. It looks for key facts about you to accumulate a profile so that when it answers, it's answering you in context. Well, if you've never used ChatGPT before and you give it this prompt, it's going to struggle a little bit to give you a meaningful answer. But if you say, okay, I'm running a food truck, I'm running a SaaS software business, and we've got, these customers, give it a little more context, you get a better answer. So just be aware, the more information you share, the more background you share about your business, the better the responses are going to be. Okay, so this is a prompt that you can use to help estimate your crowd. But there's several other prompts in the book, and there's no limit to how you can use ChatGPT to help you understand and evaluate, including doing things like uploading your list and saying, you got to be careful about privacy. You decide what information you want to share, but you could give it data about your list, upload your list, say, tell me about these people. What can we learn? And it can do remarkable things to help you assess your ability to raise capital from your tribe. Okay, so now we got to be talking about how much money do you need, right? Because here's one of the key principles that I truly believe about crowdfunding is that virtually anyone can raise capital from the crowd. And I often worry that people who people who are ineligible can't, right? So if you have been in trouble with the SEC Securities and Exchange Commission, you can't raise capital under regulation crowdfunding. You're banned. So that's about the only exception. I have a friend that I have recent contact with. It was on my show. He is a returned citizen, right? He spent some time in prison, and he successfully raised quite a bit of capital. I think he raised over $1 million from the crowd. So you are not, it's hard to find a group that is ineligible and unable to raise some capital from the crowd, but quickly we got to assess it. Can you raise enough? So part of that, first half of that is how much can you raise from your tribe and your community? Second part is how much do you need? Okay, so let's be talking about how much you need. So you got to be looking at all the things you want to do. If you're starting at the business plan stage, boy, you got to figure out a lot, right? Because you haven't done it before. How much capital do you need to get to a meaningful place where you could either become profitable and cash flow positive, or to where you can raise capital at a better valuation, and you don't want to raise it all at a too low a valuation before you've really done anything and de-risked the deal and increased your valuation. Okay, so you got to figure this out. One of the hard parts is just budgeting for growth, and the challenges of figuring stuff out. You've got to leave room in your capital raising budget for the costs of raising the capital, right? You're going to pay money to the portals. You're going to pay money to attorneys in all likelihood, maybe not a lot, but some. You may have to pay an accountant to help you with some of that work. So there are a lot of different expenses maybe coming up. And so you got to plan for that, and marketing. A successful crowdfunding campaign, even when you have a good high potential tribe, you've got to reach them. And sending them 1,000 emails may not be the best strategy. You're going to have to come up with a combined, multifaceted strategy that's going to require you to spend some marketing. So you got to figure all of that out. But your part of that is going to be then explaining that to your community. So you may want to use this prompt to help you clarify the purpose of your crowdfunding campaign for talking with investors. And so this is just a guide to help you think through the messaging at this point about what are you going to use the capital for after you've kind of created a budget. But there are lots of other prompts in the book, and an infinite number of ways that you could use ChatGPT. For instance, you could say, okay, like there may be equipment you need, and you may be able to think, well, I can go to Home Depot and get the consumer version of this for $1,000. But you may find out that the commercial version that you really need is $10,000. Well, if you learn that after the fact, after you've raised the capital, but you didn't raise enough, that's really trouble. ChatGPT can help you figure out, what do you need? Let's say if you're going to put a stove or an oven in a restaurant, not your home. What is involved? What does that look like? And it may be a very different kind of thing, and it'll help you figure out what you really need and what it's going to cost. All kinds of great tools for ChatGPT to help you with that. Okay, then you got to pick a platform. And I am a strong believer that the answer is not from a short list, it's from a long list. For a wide variety of reasons, there are a lot of reasons why you may not want to be on one of the big, more popular portals. You may, depending on what you're doing and who your tribe is, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd point out that on a typical raise on one of the most popular platforms, most of the money is still going to be raised by you and not from the portals crowd. Despite all the portals, 100% of them will tend to exaggerate, at least in your mind, when you're done. Most most founders will tell me, boy, I sure thought they would do more. They told me they would do more. That's the reality, right? So you need to plan on the fact that you're going to have to do the work. And so if you're going to have to do the work, no matter which portal you're on, look for the things that are important to you, the way that the portal will support you. Some of the big portals won't support you much in the early days. They'll support you later on after you kind of don't need it. So maybe you want to find a portal that has relatively few offerings on it where they will offer you support in the earlier days. So there are lots of options to consider. So don't rush it. So look at, the fees and if you're doing something that is very impactful, very climate focused, you may want to ask yourself, is that really the niche of the portal I'm looking at? Maybe there's a better portal. And so you might say, oh, wow, Climatize does exclusively climate deals. And Honeycomb Credit does their Raise Green offerings with a climate focus. Maybe that's a better fit for me than one of the big three. So you consider all the options, look at the details, but one of the things that you can do is ask ChatGPT to help you assess that process. And this is sort of a general get started discussion, but I'd encourage you to dig deeper, to keep asking the follow-up questions. It'll help you do research. One of the great things about a Form C, a Form C is the filing, an issuer, a company that's raising capital has to file with the SEC. Well, that Form C has to include the fees that the portal is charging. And so it's sometimes hard to find that. One of the tricks is to upload that Form C into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to assess the fees that an issuer like you may be charged by that portal. Give you a pretty good benchmark for what you would expect to be charged using that portal. Because most of them are not entirely transparent about the fees and the costs. I'd also encourage you to talk to someone who's raised on that portal to give you a sense of, almost all of them will say something about plus costs, right? External costs. And so you need to figure out what that means for each portal, because that's going to be a little different answer too. Okay. Now, you've got to figure out what the structure of your offering is. You want this to be appealing. I'm sometimes impressed by people who are able to overwhelm this with great marketing, but I encourage you to not make the deal terms a point of friction, but instead to be very fair. You want to offer deal terms that you would be comfortable offering to your friends and family, right? Because you don't want them to feel like they were victimized. So I encourage you to make sure that you're creating a fair offering. ChatGPT can help you do that too. So there are two parts to this. You've really got to figure out what you're going to offer, what deal terms may make the most sense for you. ChatGPT can help you figure that out. But then you've also got to figure out the story. You've got to be able to explain to investors why they should back you on those terms. And so that can be a challenge. And so a good ChatGPT prompt could be to ask it to help you write a compelling pitch. But part of that is going to be to give it the deal terms you're trying to offer so that you can put this. Remember, the deal terms and that pitch have to go on the offering page and in the Form C. They don't go in your social media messaging under current rules. We're kind of hoping and expecting to see some of those rules relaxed a little bit, maybe as early as this year. But for now, keep the offering details, the deal terms on the web page. But ChatGPT can help you with the messaging, especially well, but can also help you figure out the pros and cons of raising equity or raising with debt or a revenue-based financing. You can give it some of the details about your business. If you're years away from cash flow and revenue, probably shouldn't use any kind of debt. On the other hand, if you are an operating business that is already reached profitability, can help you figure out which deal terms of, what debt structure might work best for you. So great opportunities to use ChatGPT with that kind of analysis. It can also help you with designing a winning marketing strategy. In my book, I worked with Crowdfunding Professional Association board member Jason Fishman, who runs Digital Niche Agency, arguably the foremost marketing firm in the crowdfunding space, has helped companies raise hundreds of millions of dollars from the crowd. Right? So he knows what he's doing. He helped me with chapter 5 of my book, which is and we outlined an 8-step marketing plan exercise to come up with a comprehensive marketing strategy. And there isn't one step that ChatGPT can't help you achieve. So, but you've got to be thinking about really assessing the business, your competition, your target audience. There is a lot of work to developing a really good marketing plan, and ChatGPT can help you with every step. And of course, part of that is developing the messaging. And so the reality is, as you're crafting social media and ongoing messaging, email and such, it can be exhausting for founders. And yet you've got to keep beating the drum. You've got to make it interesting. You've got to figure out, content-driven, story-driven messaging to help catalyze your audience. ChatGPT never gets tired. It never gets bored. It's never exhausted. If you ask it for 100 tweets or X posts, it can give you 100. You can reject as many as you want. You can edit them to your heart's content. You own what it outputs, right? You don't have to use it, but it's never tired. It can keep going at 2 a.m. It can keep going no matter what. So it's a great resource for you. Here's one prompt that you could use: create a marketing plan for my crowdfunding campaign, including social media, email outreach, and ad ideas, and then describe your target audience. But it can also help you define your target audience before you write this. It can help you with so many steps in the marketing plan so that you are not, in the olden days. When I talk about the olden days, I'm talking about 2 years ago. You might hire a marketing consultant to come in, and you might spend 3 days with the team in a locked room or at an away site doing this kind of exercise and come out of the room with a 30-page report. Now in an afternoon, you can do it with ChatGPT and come out with the same report, maybe better, maybe more objective, less filtered by your pride and your uniqueness and the power of your own vision, right? So it can be a powerful, great tool to help you with this stuff. Okay, let's talk about building trust with financial situations, right? Part of the deal with a crowdfunding campaign is you've got to put together historical financials. I'm a big fan of sharing projections as well. Now, I've seen ChatGPT build some projections. It can't do it well yet. I think that will come, but it can help you figure out some of the key criteria that you can build into a forecast, help you keep it reasonably simple, but also meaningful, so that you can build a projection to say, okay, Whether you're building a food truck or a SaaS business that's infinitely scalable, it can help you figure out what is the market potential, who can I serve, how many people can I serve, et cetera, to begin building the financial model. Then it can help you estimate costs. Are we seeing increasing marginal costs? That's unusual, but typically you're going to see diminishing marginal costs, and you can begin looking at how your efficiencies might come into play. Your margins might improve over time as you're doing things for bigger and bigger audiences, et cetera. It can help you figure out a lot of stuff that you can build into a model and make great projections. And then it can help you with creating the messaging around the story, the explanation of those projections. It can help you with every aspect of that. One of the key things is just helping the investor audience understand in the crowdfunding world where everyone is an investor. Part of what we have to do is education. So we've got to find ways to explain sometimes new, sometimes complicated concepts to what we might call a lay audience. They're new, perhaps, in this space, which is why I just want to reiterate, I think it's so important for us to be thoughtful about creating fair deal terms, reasonable valuations, et cetera, that are easy to defend, that we are happy we sold to our mother, our sister, our brother, as well, the aunt and uncle that we're going to see at Thanksgiving. We want to make sure we've treated them fairly and that they can profit with you in the success of the business. So trying to make this understandable and explain, really one of the challenges. ChatGPT can help you do that in a way that makes sense, but that's after you ask it to help you build the projections, at least the underlying assumptions. It's really good at evaluating what it would cost to do this, what growth rates might look like based on looking at, its vast trove of access to information and all that's on the internet. So it can gather information and analyze it very quickly. Okay. One of the realities is that before you can go live with your campaign, you've got to file a Form C. And most of the portals will help you do this to varying degrees, but there is some of this, no matter the portal you're using, that will always fall on your shoulders. And you may, depending on the portal, they may sort of coach you in a way where they're asking for this information without telling you they're using it for the Form C. It may be a little bit opaque in their process, but they're gathering this information from you for the Form C. And others are very transparent, right? So others will review the Form C with you in detail. And the key part of that, the substance of that, is kind of the offering memorandum that's part of the Form C. And it's a fair bit of work. It's a fair bit of work to prepare that and to do it in a reasonable way, because you'll need to disclose a lot of stuff from a legal standpoint. But I'm a big fan of following the spirit of regulation crowdfunding, which is to give ordinary, everyday investors more information and better information expressed in understandable language than you would be required to give if you were marketing your offering only to accredited investors. Accredited investors, are presumed to have more experience investing. It's not always true, but the law presumes that they do, and that they have the wherewithal to absorb losses if they make dumb mistakes. When you're marketing to your friends and family, I encourage you to provide expansive, follow the spirit of the law here, give them all the information. And ChatGPT can help you do that in a way that's so effective, right? You can give it raw data, rough facts, you can give it bullet points, and it can convert it into the proper narrative that is both accessible and compliant for a Form C. So, a lot of the stuff around a Form C is sort of legalese. ChatGPT can help explain what a specific question means. So if you're looking at a specific part of the request it may come from the portal, it may come from the Form C template form that you get from the SEC. There, you can get that, and there's a link in the book to that. But you can get ChatGPT to explain it, help you answer all of the questions. Don't be discouraged. Just recognize that ChatGPT makes this into a one-day process if you devote a day to it, rather than a months long process. It can radically accelerate the process. You may, after one day, find yourself, okay, I got a blank here, I got to fill this in. But you can make tremendous progress in one day with your Form C. And here's just one of the prompts that you might use to start that exercise. Explain what goes into Form C for a regulation crowdfunding offering, and then help me draft the risk factors, just one of the sections. And there's nothing I think ChatGPT loves more than digging into the risk factors and helping you figure out what you ought to disclose in terms of risk factors. So it's a great tool, especially for that, but for all aspects of the Form C. It can help you not only figure out what goes in a spot, but what you should answer. Okay. Once you've got your Form C, your offering is likely to become live. You've got your marketing plan and your strategy. You've done all kinds of preparation for a sound offering. Now it's time to begin actually executing, right? And so now you have to reach out, and you're going to want to reach out to your core audience, friends, family, your best customers, to lock in instant progress. I can't emphasize this enough. Most investors will not invest if someone else hasn't invested ahead of you. WeFunder now requires you to get a written commitment from someone that will invest at least $5,000 at the outset before they will let you launch your crowdfunding campaign. And let me just say, whether or not you're using WeFunder, that is good practice. You need to have someone lined up who is committed to putting $5,000 in on the first day. And that's a challenge. If you don't have that, and you're not on WeFunder, and so no one's forcing you to, that's going to be a challenge for you in raising capital. If people who aren't familiar with you, aren't on your inner circle, show up to your crowdfunding campaign and you've raised $0, or you've raised $120, or you've raised $1,200 against $1 million goal, that is a real downer. So you've got to get some real progress real fast, which means you've got to prep that early and create some early buzz. And you've got to get your people who commit early. You might get someone 30 days early to commit, and then when it's the day, say, okay, today's the day. Oh, well, I'll get to it tonight. I got busy and I didn't get you got to get them seriously committed, got to coordinate with them. So there's a lot to do to have a successful launch. And then you got to get those deals closed. So the beginning is really the beginning of the end in a lot of ways. But you've got to be successful on that first. I encourage you to think of it as 24 hours, but realistically, you might have 72 hours to create a little bit of momentum. And even though you have done all of that on the back end, I think it's also reasonable to then talk about the success you've had. If you've reached a third of your goal in the first 72 hours, which is what I would encourage you to do at least a third in the first 72 hours, then brag about how the community is rallied around you almost spontaneously to support you, even if you've worked for weeks or months to pull that together. So here's a ChatGPT prompt to help you with some of what you might do messaging wise, to help you write a launch day email. And you might send out several different emails that day. You might send one to the people who've already committed to invest. Okay, today's the day. You've got to go do it today. You committed to do it on day one. Today is day one. Go make your investment. And then you may send another one out to people who are warm but not committed. That'd be a different message. And then you may, depending on how the progress and the tallies go, you may want to start reaching out to the cold contacts to let them know that you've got a crowdfunding campaign live and making progress. I wouldn't bring in the cold contacts until you are making progress. Okay, then, and let me point out here before we move on, let me point out, occasionally I run across people who've launched a campaign and they figure, well, I won't tell anyone, so no one will go to the page. That's not true. There are a bunch of people in the industry like me who are checking many, if not all, of the new offerings for a variety of reasons. And so there are a lot of people who are looking at those pages in the first days, first 3 to 7 days. There are a lot of people checking that page out. If you've got zero progress after 3 days, after 7 days, that is a problem. You've got to be queued up. So when that Form C goes live and the offering is live on the page, shebang, my friend, you've got to hit the ground running. Okay, let's move on. You got to keep up the momentum. After you have launched the campaign and you've got that, say, third in the first 72 hours, there's a part of you that says, okay, marketplace, take me home. I'll just watch the money roll in now. That is not how it works. The campaigns that are successful have people actively working at every step of the game, every step of the way, working to make sure that the money keeps coming in. It does not just happen, even if you have a successful first 72 hours. You've got to keep that momentum up. You got to keep pushing. And again, here's one of the things to remember. ChatGPT is never going to get tired, right? Never going to wear out. And that's also why you need to be using a variety of marketing tools, right? So that if you've got a mailing list, their inbox space is somewhat precious, and they will resent getting 32 emails a day from you, or even perhaps 32 promotional emails in a month. You say, man, that's more than one a day. Dude, let it go. I'm not going to invest. And you haven't talked about anything else. And boy, you wear them out. So you need a multi-pronged approach. You might need to do a social media advertising campaign to your mailing list so that when those folks log in on Facebook or log in to Instagram or somewhere else, they're seeing some of your messaging and they're being reminded and they're getting that sense that, oh, wait, this is something maybe I should participate in. I think that some of the things you'll do advertising wise will be less offensive and less intrusive than emails. So even though you may have them on your list, may have access to them, maybe be able to call them on the phone, it may be important for you to be advertising as well. But one of the things that's challenging is, especially in the middle days of a crowdfunding campaign, let's say you're planning to do this for 60 to 90 days, maybe 120 days. boy, there are a lot of days in the middle of that campaign where it just feels like, oh my gosh. And so you're exhausted. You may feel like the audience is exhausted. You kind of got to come up with some fresh messaging, and ChatGPT can help you keep it fresh, come up with new ideas, content-driven messaging that will allow you to refresh the message, remind people about the campaign, but in a way that's fresh. So here's one of the many prompts that you could use for ChatGPT. Write a follow-up message to someone who expressed interest in my crowdfunding campaign but hasn't invested yet. Boy, you're going to have a lot of those. And you may want to draft, there are automated tools that you can use to send follow-ups to people until they invest. And ChatGPT can help you write the messaging in that staggered way. Let me be very clear. I mentioned this once before, I alluded to this, but it's just so important to be clear. You own whatever ChatGPT says. And when I say you own it, I don't mean literally the copyright. That's essentially true. No one else owns it. It's supposed to be original. I know there are complaints that ChatGPT and others are sometimes copying too directly from content creators. That is offensive and wrong. We need to fix that so that ChatGPT doesn't do that. But what's really the case is if you take a message ChatGPT writes and you put it out into the universe, you own that and own it. What I mean is you are responsible for it, right? If it's not true, that's a problem that you have. You can't go back to ChatGPT and say you screwed up. What good does that do you? You have to be responsible. You got to read every single thing and recognize that you own it. You're responsible for it, and you will receive the benefits and you will receive the penalties of everything you send out. So you don't ever take lightly your need to review thoughtfully every word that ChatGPT spits out. You are responsible for the messaging. Okay. After you have completed your raise, there are a few things that there are compliance steps. You got to file a Form CR, and everyone who is successful with a crowdfunding campaign has to file at least one. And depending on how much you raise and a variety of other factors, and if you keep raising, you may have to do this forever, in effect, or on an ongoing basis. So you've got to do that step. ChatGPT can help you with some of that, including helping you evaluate whether or not you are required to file one, help you with the messaging, but then set aside the regulatory requirements. You've got a batch of investors, even if they're debt holders, that are expecting information, communication, along with the money back, right? If someone invests in your business one way or another, they're expecting you to give them more money back than they gave you. And I recognize that sometimes they've paid fees to invest, and you've certainly paid fees, and they're not looking for you to return what you net received, right? So if someone had to pay an 8% fee going in on their investment, and then you paid an 8% fee, and then you had some fixed costs, and then you had some marketing budget, and so you might only get 70% of what someone paid, but they want a return on the whole 100. Okay, so let's be realistic about that. They want that money back. And so it's really important to have a line of communication so that you are alerting your investors to your progress. And that's especially important if you might ever decide to go back. And you might say to yourself, I'm never going back. This is too hard. I'm not doing this again. You may. you may, for a whole variety of reasons, want to go back to those investors again someday. Trust me, it behooves you to communicate. Okay, so stay in touch, build that relationship. I hate to tell you this, I've invested in many dozens, many dozens of crowdfunding campaigns, and I will tell you that the most don't communicate with me at all. Very disappointing. It's a problem. I want you to understand it is a problem. I expect communication from the companies that I invest in and don't receive it from most. It's a problem. I want to caution you against adopting that practice. You gotta stay current with your investors so that if heaven forbid, if you go out of business, you do not want that to be a surprise. You want to be updating them along the way with the positive news and let them know what the challenges are. I got one or two investments that are exceptionally good at this, and I tell you that is the best practice, and ChatGPT can help. So you can give the raw facts to ChatGPT, right? These are the successes we've had in the last 60 days. These are the challenges we've had in the last 30 days. Help me figure out how to communicate this, right? Draft a monthly update email based on these new updates. Include the progress and the challenges, etc. Okay, so this is just one prompt that you can use, but so many more that can help you as you are working through this process. Again, I just want to make clear, AI tools of this sort, like ChatGPT, completely change the game for regulation crowdfunding. They lift the burden dramatically. And if you lift the burden, you lift the cost, you reduce the cost of doing a crowdfunding campaign. And if you reduce the cost, you increase the efficiency and the appeal. And there is some risk in our economy right now that we're heading into a recession. And so, the marketplace, whether you're trying to get a bank loan, a new credit card, it can all become more difficult. And so having crowdfunding be one of the ways you might be able to access capital in the next 12 to 24 months is vitally important for you to explore. This may be the source that keeps you in business in a difficult time. So, and AI makes it so much easier than it was just 24 months ago. My book guides you to making that a step. And I encourage you to invest in the paid version of Gemini or ChatGPT for like $20 a month. I pay for both. And I'm so glad that I do. It saves me so much money every month to have that huge bandwidth available to me. But even the free versions of these tools can be tremendous help. And so I encourage you to check it out. This can be a game changer for you. It can be a complete game changer for the industry. Again, here's the QR code for downloading the book. I invite you to check it out, 4se.fund/CMS free to get your free download of the book. And I also want to invite you to attend Super Crowd LA coming up on May 1st through 3rd. That will be in Santa Monica. It will be an in-person event, but we're also live streaming the core of the conference on May 2nd throughout the day to E360 TV, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, etc. So check it out. Visit supercrowdla.com, and we hope to see you there. I'm happy to take questions. I think we have time for one or two questions if there are any. You could ask ChatGPT what to ask me if you want. Okay, wait a minute. I want to stop the sharing before I do crazy stuff here. Where did my menu go? Okay, any questions? Let's see here. There is a question. Brian Christie, thank you for the kind question. What is the most difficult thing that issuers face during a crowdfunding campaign? I think there's no question that the most difficult thing they face is the difficulty in raising capital, right? Fundamentally, asking people to invest and getting them to do it is harder than anyone anticipates when they start a crowdfunding campaign. There are almost no exceptions to that. I've talked to a few people that would say that, but the general rule is that is the challenge. And ChatGPT can help you with that in a variety of ways, but especially when you're just feeling absolutely exhausted. And it is a perfectly reasonable thing to say to ChatGPT, I need you to draft 32 new ideas for Instagram posts. And now ChatGPT was upgraded just in the last 2 weeks with some amazing new rendering capabilities. And so you can give it some brand guidelines for how you want images to look, so you can create a coherent theme, and you can create Instagram posts in 60 seconds. And so you could say to ChatGPT, give me 30 ideas, pick your favorite 10, and then say, okay, render these. And then from the renderings, you could pick your favorite 5. And in 30 minutes, you've got 5 beautiful new Instagram posts, for instance. And you are not having to do as much of the creativity, and it does relieve some of the stress, because crowdfunding is a lot of work, and part of it is just that mental and emotional exhaustion, and the AI bots just don't get exhausted. So great question, Brian. Brian, you've got a follow-up question, or you want to add something to that? Maybe we should pop you into the room here. Let's see, Rose, why don't you see if you can bring Brian Christie in? But let's see here. We got another question or not? Let's see. Okay, so we've got a chat from, with the increasing competition among portals, what differentiates successful platforms in the eyes of both investors and issuers? I think it's very distinct for what's important to you, right? I really want to encourage people to look beyond the big 3 names that we kind of know: Republic, Start Engine, and WeFunder. Those are great portals. They help people raise millions upon millions of dollars every year. My gosh, thank heavens they are there. They're making such a difference in the world. But I would encourage you to look beyond them, to consider a variety of options. So for instance, I alluded to the climate space. There are 2 portals now that focus on that. Honeycomb Credit has a Raise Green section kind of on its portal. They acquired the portal Raise Green, and so those offerings are now there. And then Climatize is focused on climate solutions. So 2 great portals that are doing almost exclusively climate stuff. So that's a great thing to be contemplating. From an investor standpoint, I have made investments on, I think, a dozen different portals, maybe more now. I will tell you that from an investor standpoint, I'm very focused on fees, and fees vary dramatically for investors, from 0 to 8%, right? That's a big swing. I've never paid more than 8%, but holy crap, that seems to me like a big fee for taking my money, especially when I know you're charging the issuer an amount similar to that. So I look for the fees that investors are charged. From an issuer standpoint, if you have raised a lot of capital in the past from the crowd, this isn't your first rodeo, you have a lot of experience, a lot of basis on which to make this evaluation. But one of the things to keep in mind is that you don't need as much help. So you may not want to be on a small portal anymore where they do a lot of hand-holding. But if you're doing your first crowdfunding campaign, you may want to be on one of the smaller portals where they will hold your hand. That's another consideration. And then, of course, if you are serious about raising millions of dollars from the crowd, I have to say that CFPA has a big sponsor in Dealmaker, and Dealmaker has established an almost unique ability to help issuers raise millions of dollars. So if you're interested in raising millions of dollars, they have a fee up front, an upfront fee, pretty significant. So this is not a place where you want to go to raise $50,000. No, that's not a fit. It's not a deal funder, a deal maker kind of deal. So those are some of the considerations, Chris, that I'm thinking about as an investor and as an issuer. Great question. I think with that, our time is about up, and I really appreciate those of you who came. Great questions, and really appreciate the time you've all invested. CFPA will be back with another webinar next month. It'll be great. So don't miss it. Make sure. And if you're not a member of CFPA, for crying out loud, for a whopping $10 a month, if you're on the monthly plan, about $9 a month if you pay annually, my good golly. And the work that CFPA is doing for the industry, advocating with regulators, advocating with Congress for constructive changes to help you raise more capital from the crowd and have more opportunities to invest. CFPA is the only way to do that. I encourage you to do it. Check it out. Okay.